So, this episode is very late. I was going to release it last Thursday. I forgot. And then I was going to do it on Friday, but I happened to listen to it, the audio recorded, and it sounded horrible. So I deleted it with the intention of releasing it on Saturday, and then everything got confused and I ran out of time. So I am re-recording it now and hoping desperately that it actually sounds good. Who knew I had standards, right? Are you a sad individual living under a Parisian opera house and dropping chandeliers on people's heads for fun? Well, you may want to stop because that's a crime and get yourself a podcast. How do you do that? Easy. It's with Anchor. Anchor is a totally free app and website, and you can record from your phone or your computer. You don't need fancy smancy equipment. Seriously, I have recorded podcasts from my bathtub while I was bathing. Anchor is free and super easy to use. Anchor has really simple podcasting tools. You sign up and then you start podcasting. It really is that simple. Within an hour of starting my podcast, I was already distributed on Spotify. Now I'm on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Breaker, and Radio Public. So look for the app or the website. The website is anchor.fm. And the app, just go to your friendly local app store and look up Anchor. That's ANCHOR. Happy podcasting. Hello, my Hoobie Fruits. Welcome to the Kawaii Slutty Barfast podcast. I am your host, Sarah. And today we will be discussing Season 2, Episode 17 of the OC, The Brothers Grimm. Da-da-da-da-da. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da. I can't sing. We open up on the show to lovely Cohen Kitchen shenanigans. Sandy is trying to get everybody to have a nice family meal, and Kirsten's working with Carter on Julie's magazine, and Ryan and Seth just want to play video games, and poor Sandy's like, gosh darn it, I just want to have a nice meal. So they all start to sit down, and then the phone rings, and guess who it is? Santa Claus. No, it's not Santa Claus, it's Trey. Ryan's brother who stole cars, and that was his legacy, apparently teaching him to smash car windows to break into them because Ryan could never have figured out how to do that for himself. But anyway, so apparently the next day he's getting out of jail of Chino, and I don't know anything about prison. Is that really how it is? You think that they'd want things to be more planned? But anyway, so the next day, Ryan he's kind of sulking in his room. He doesn't know what to do. He doesn't know how to feel about having Trey back in his life, and it says basically like, hey, you know what? You're my brother. I have your back, and that's very nice. So Sandy and Ryan go to the prison, and Sandy's like, well, how do you feel about, if we let Trey stay with us? And Ryan's like, I don't know about that. And honestly, can't really blame him. I mean, like, he hasn't spent time with Trey in like over a year, so I kind of get the discomfort. But anyway, so Trey gets out, and Ryan tries to pass off a handshake, and Trey's like, no, and pulls him in for a hug, which is very nice. For now. Good times. So, back at school, Marissa and Summer are talking, and Marissa's like, I really should be there for Ryan, and I don't know, did Ryan even ask her to? But anyway, so Zach's back from Italy, and Summer's all paranoid and like Twitter-pated because she's like expecting him to like get up in her face and scream at her, which I kind of understand the witness, but that's not really Zach's style. Like, you know, I mean, I get that it was kind of shitty of her. Well, kind of, like, massively shitty of her to, like, just ditch him at the airport like that in front of his family and his sister with their horrible taste in wedding and bridesmaid dresses. I don't know anything about the wedding dress, but woof, that bridesmaid's dress was just wretched. Man, Summer was absolutely right to leave that situation. But anyway, so, like, they see him, and he's like, oh, hi, and Summer's like, what's going on? I don't understand this. Why are you being so nice to me? So, we get to the office, and Kirsten and Carter are watching a videotape, and Julie sees them, and, like, immediately she's paranoid because she thinks it's her sex tape, which, I gotta say, I'm pretty sure that if they ended up accidentally watching Julie's sex tape, Kirsten and Carter's expressions would not be like that. It would be a little more shocking. But anyway, Julie's like, and she pulls Kirsten into the office and is like, look, I need $500,000, otherwise this sex tape's going to leak. And Kirsten's basically like, welp, you gotta talk to my dad about this. And I know that they have, like, this weird frenemies thing going on, but that's just mean. I mean, she has to know that he would not react well to that, and it's not like something Julie did last week, you know? It was years ago. Just, like, have a little compassion. Oh, and she also did say that she worked with Sandy, and Kirsten's like, well, if Sandy can't do more, there's nothing I could do for you. And it's like, you were willing to loan money to Jimmy after he stole from his friends. Julie's just trying to protect her reputation and her family's reputation. I gotta say that what Jimmy did was a lot worse. And Jimmy's a decent guy. Like, yeah, he made a mistake, but, like, if you're gonna compare the two things, what he did was so much worse. Sandy and Ryan are driving Trey to his friend's house where he's staying, and Trey knocks on the door and looks through the windows, and it looks like nobody's there. So Sandy's like, oh, well, why don't you give him a shot of living with us? And Ryan's like, oh, okay. So Trey gets back into the car, and they drive off. Yay! So back at school, we've got Seth and Zach. Seth's like, oh, you're back. Nobody ever comes back except for the fact that he came back and Ryan came back. But okay, sure, Seth, whatever. And Zach tells him that he met somebody else, but he wants Seth to keep it a secret because he doesn't want to hurt Summer's feelings, which, yeah, knowing Summer, not only would it hurt her feelings, she would become very, very enraged. So that's probably the best, because Summer's not the most unhypocritical person in Newport Beach. You know what I mean? Yeah. Trey is at the Cohen house, and he's very, very impressed. You know how, like, in all the real worlds, like, where they come into the house and they're all, oh, this is amazing. That's pretty much what he's doing. So Sandy's like, hey, why don't you take the pool house, and Ryan will take the spare bedroom. And Trey's like, oh, golly gee willikers, wow. And they get to the pool house, and Trey's like, hey, you know, I'm sorry for taking away your bedroom. And Ryan's like, nah, it'll only be a few days. And then he realizes how that sounds and apologizes. And that's pretty much it for that. Seth comes into the pool house and is talking to who he thinks is Ryan about Trey. And then Trey pops out and is like, yeah, you got everything wrong, didn't find Jesus, didn't shave my head. And he's just, I guess it could come off as rude, except for the fact that Seth just kind of walked on him. I mean, yeah, it's his own house, but did nobody leave a note, like, telling Seth, hey, by the way, Trey's in the pool house, so, you know. I mean, that seems like ruder than anything, you know? Sandy ends up giving Trey some money so that he can, buy some clothes and toiletries so that the poor guy doesn't have to run around like a Dickensian orphan. Please, sir, may I have some more Pantene? That was a terrible accent. But anyway, so Seth's like, oh, hey, I can go with you shopping. And Ryan's like, maybe you want to call Marissa. And Seth is like, oh, well, yeah, that's a much better idea. Okay. So then the scene changes and we get to Julie and Caleb, who for some reason I keep on wanting to call Jacob today. I've deleted this 2 times because I kept on calling him Jacob and I don't know why. But anyway, so she's, kind of burying the lead about the movie, and then finally she busts out. She's like, look, when I was younger, I made this film, and now I'm being blackmailed for $500,000. And Caleb's like, okay, I'll get right on that and fix it. And Julie's like, what? And everybody in the world is like, what? And if you haven't seen the show before now, you're probably like, what? But trust me, Caleb Nichol is terrible. He's just awful. He's one of the worst. He's not the worst because I think the worst person in the OC comes in season 3. But when we get to season 3, we will definitely be talking about it, or I will be talking about it, and you'll be listening. And if you want to, send me mail and comment back about that's cool. That's more than cool. I like that idea. Ryan and Trey are in a fancy schmancy store type thing, and Trey's doing and owing over a $200 watch, which, gotta be honest, for a watch, that's not really that expensive. I mean, don't get me wrong, there are, way, way cheaper and more practical watches, but, for a watch, that's not really that much. Trey is a terrible criminal. But, anyway, so he goes and looks at the clothes, and Ryan's like, well, why don't we go to a cheaper place that's smarter style? And he's like, no, I mean, I have money, I'm gonna spend it on nice stuff, which, completely understandable. So Marissa walks in, and I seriously had to question why they felt the need to call her, because have people not noticed how she dresses sometimes? The girl dresses strange. So there's a little bit of awkwardness where, oh, you're Ryan's girlfriend. And Marissa's like, no, we're friends. No, awkward. And then she picks out a shirt for him to wear, which is okay, yes. But, literally, it's, the thing next to her. So it's not, a lot of thought was put into it. And then Ryan and Marissa tease each other over ugly hats. You know who had a good hat collection? Anna. I miss Anna. Kirsten and Julie are sitting at the office, and Julie's telling Kirsten how Caleb basically swooped in and offered to take care of everything, and then she makes a joke about him having a sex tape, and I don't know why she thought that was a good idea to say to Kirsten, because who wants to think about their fathers in a sex tape? Ugh. Anyway, so Julie gets the notion in her head that Kirsten has a crush on Carter and starts ripping her about it, and then Cindy comes in, and Kirsten is very distracted with thoughts of Carter, and Cindy's like, hey, so I invited Trey to come live with us, and Kirsten's like, okay, that's fun, and he's like, what? And then he asked if he could meet Carter, and Kirsten's like, he's really busy, and then they both go off to do their own thing. So, Trey, Ryan, and Mercer are in the store. They're checking out, and they're leaving, and then the guy comes by and says, hey, to Trey. That rhymes. I saw you playing with the watch, so I'm gonna need to check your stuff. And Trey, flips out and basically tries to attack the guy and, dumps the bag on the floor. And this is what you don't do if you're accused of shoplifting. Don't attack the person accusing you. That's, not a good look for anybody. It's the next day, and Ryan and Seth are sitting and discussing Trey's outburst at the store when Trey and Sandy come into the kitchen and they're talking about Trey finding a job, and things get very awkward. So Sandy, Kirsten, and Seth go out to fix some furniture for the party or something. And Ryan and Trey stay behind to talk, and Trey admits that he flipped out and he's sorry and that stuff's not gonna fly. Yarp. We are dealing with more Summer and Zach awkwardness. Again. I really hate this storyline. But anyway, so basically he came by and brought like a bunch of stuff. Is like, hey, I just didn't think it was healthy for me to look at this. And she's like, but, and he's like, yeah, okay. And then it turns out that Seth told her about Francesca, and he's like, oh, well, you left me at an airport. And then she's like, oh, well, there's something from the Valley coming on, so I have to watch that. Okay, bye. Caleb goes to Lance's motel room, and he brings the money and he shows it to him, and he's like, okay, well, I've had PIs investigate everything Julie's done, so like there's nothing she could have done that I wouldn't know about. And Lance is like, sure, whatever, of course, it's the only tape here, have it. And then there's a knock at the door, and two burly men come in, and Caleb's like, yeah, I'll have that money about now. And so he leaves, and they go into the room, and, well, it's very mysterious what happens next. And this is so ridiculous. Like, can you imagine, like, being Lance and asking somebody for $500,000 and not even, like, having a smidge of security? Just some people's children. Julie is trying to decide what dress to wear for the presentation and is teasing Kirsten about Carter, who then comes in with a bottle of wine and is like, oh, let's crack this baby open before the presentation. And Kirsten's like, we're working, so that's probably very unprofessional. And Julia is smirking. Did I call her Julia? Julie. Her name is Julie. And she's smirking, and she's being very, very snarky. Summer goes over to Zach's place to give him back his stuff, and his mom's like, ugh, it's you. And she's like, well, I mean, he seems pretty good, what with his new girlfriend. And his mom is like, I'm sorry, what? And she's like, 6'2", blonde, supermodel. And Zach's mom is like, he didn't leave the hotel the entire time we were in Italy. And Summer's like, ew, and leaves. Ryan and Trey are sitting in the pool house, and Trey starts on how he went to like 5 or 6 places and they rejected him on the spot. And Ryan's like, well, hey, let's get out to eat and show you the pier, and I'll see some nice boats. And Trey's like, okay, cool. And then for some reason they start throwing clothes at each other, and Ryan finds the watch from the store, and he's like, oh, you'll never change. And Trey's like, I bought that for you, here's the receipt. And then they go at it, and he's like, well, since you don't believe me, why don't I leave? And he's like, fine. Zach goes to Summer's place and tells her that he knows that she had a talk with his mother, and they talk about the whole Francesca thing and how she, doesn't actually exist. And he explains that he didn't want things to be tense between him, her, and Summer, so he just made it up. So Summer then goes to the party and confronts Seth and says that she's angry at him, and he's like, okay, well, why? And she's like, well, I'm going to your room for 20 minutes. If you figure out, let me know. If you don't, then I leave. So Julie and Kirsten are talking about the magazine, and Caleb comes up to him, and Julie's like, so everything's okay, right? And Caleb's like, yeah, everything's fine. Marissa and Ryan are hunting down Trey. They track him to a place in Chino called Reggie's Bar, where he is kind of sort of playing pool, but not really. So they basically get into a spat, and Trey's like, oh, I don't fit there anymore, and he's like, fine, I'm leaving. So he goes outside, and he kicks the trash can, and Marissa and Ryan are in the bar standing around awkwardly. So at the party, Carter is like, hey, we need to talk to Kirsten because he feels that she's been acting really weird, which she has been. And so while she's talking to Carter, Julie keeps on making weird faces at her, and she's like, ugh, and then Carter notices and just kind of goes away. And then Kirsten turns around and accepts a Chardonnay from a man who turns out to be Lance. Not good. Seth goes into his bedroom where Summer's waiting, and he's like, look, I gotta be honest, I have no idea why you're so mad. So she tells him that she was jealous because of what he had said to her about Francesca, and he admits that he was jealous and insecure too because Zach was a really great guy, and it just made him feel awkward, like maybe the thing he had with Summer wasn't really real, and Summer assures him that it is real, and they fall down upon his bed and get with the smoochies. Smooch, smooch. So we are at the presentation / party, and Carter has introduced Julie, and she's going to show off her presentation for Newport Living. Oh, oops, and since I'm sure that you guys, since Lance was there, it is actually the tape of Julie's sex video. When people are running around trying to turn it off, and Julie runs off, and Lance is up there all proud of himself for being horrible. And then finally the tape stops, and Julie goes into a room, and Caleb is with her, and he's like, look, you can go to Europe or anything, and by the time you come back, I'm sure that this scandal will be over. And she's like, no, my Howard Hughes phase starts now. I'm gonna start cutting open some Kleenex boxes. She didn't say that, but, kind of the basic idea behind it. But Caleb seems to be nice and supportive. So, Carter and Sandy finally meet. A little bit of an awkward moment, but it passes, and they're very nice to each other. And then Sandy wanders off, and Carter and Kirsten are talking, and Carter's basically, well, I've sensed that things are getting kind of weird, so if there's a weird vibe, it can't for me. I'm sorry. And Kirsten's like, what? And he's like, no, seriously, we've been working together for weeks. Sorry for anything inappropriate. And then we get to the bar, Bridget's Tavern. Ryan and Marissa are just sitting there, and Marissa's like, yeah, I don't think Trey's coming back. So they get up to leave, and some complete dick weasel comes, is like, no, I want to buy you a drink. And Marissa's like, no. And then Ryan's like, yeah, she doesn't want it. And he's like, was I talking to you? And it's like, Marissa wasn't even talking to you, douche nozzle, so shut up. So, douchebag McGee punches Ryan, and they get into a fight, and two of his little friends come with them and starts holding Ryan, and Trey comes up behind them with the pool cue and grabs the guy and basically starts strangling him with the pool cue, and he's like, okay, let my brother go, and I'll let this dude go, and it's fine, they just let each other go, and then Trey, Marissa, and Ryan go scampering off into the night, laughing like they've had the time of their lives, because, they totally weren't any serious danger from drunk assholes, but whatever. So anyway, they get to Cindy's car, and Marissa's like, okay, well, where are we gonna drop you off? And Ryan's like, well, you can just come home with us. And Trey's like, you really want me there? I thought you didn't. And Ryan's like, people change. Not in this case, Ryan. One of the only times when you should not trust Ryan Atwood. When it comes to his own family, I guess. But yeah, so anyway, so they all get home, and Sandy and Kirsten are on the couch, and they're like, oh, how's the party? And they're like, fine, nothing. I mean, let's face it, with the way gossip goes around that town, they're gonna find out in like 2 hours. Tops. Seriously, it's ridiculous. So Summer and Seth come down, and they're like, oh, party, and they're like, yeah, it was great. We have leftovers. So they all sit down to eat and finally had the family dinner that Sandy wanted for so long. God bless them, everyone. I don't know. But anyway, so that's the end of this episode. Hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed making it. Bye.